Hello guys, it's Specimen here with the Faction Challenge. I just wanted to give you a brief overview of 6 decks, one for each faction, that you might like to use in the Faction Challenge. So if you haven't picked already, this might help you make your mind up. If you have picked already, there'll be timestamps in the description to just fast forward to where you want to go. There'll also be deck lists for every one of these decks in the description. Okay, the next deck is a winner. I think you're going to like this one, even if you're not taking part in the Faction Challenge for Skellige. It's a Cambi deck, okay? So what Cambi does, it discards the rightmost card in your hand, and then your opponent also discards the rightmost card in your hand. Now, you can use this round 1 or round 3, because you can dictate what you're discarding. For instance, your opponent might discard a Falabor, a Thilipel, something like that, whereas you're just discarding a Dwarven Skirmisher, which is then going to summon itself onto the melee row. Or you might have Morkvarg in the far right side of your hand, and you're going to discard Morkvarg, and they're actually going to discard a good card that they wanted to keep for later on. So Cambi's a pretty funny option. But where this card is actually incredibly powerful is used in round 2. So let's say your opponent wins round 1, and you've got 9 cards. Let's say I've got 9 cards in my hand, including Cambi. They've got 7 cards. So they're going to pass, okay? Because they're going to draw to 10 cards at the end of the round, right? And I've got 9 cards in my hand, and then I play Cambi. So I play a card from my hand, and I discard a card from my hand. So I then go down to 7 cards. My opponent had 7 cards, and they've just discarded a card. So they've now got 6 cards. I've now got 7 cards. They've now got 6 cards. So I then pass. And then the next round, we both draw 3 cards. I've suddenly got 10 cards, and they've got 9 cards. So you can actually use Cambi as card advantage. Now, it's really difficult to pull off, but essentially what you want to do is you want to just go into round 1, all guns blazing. You want to play some high tempo things, like the raiding fleet, for example, can be a nice option, like Scowl. And you just want to force your opponent into passing. Burn a brand onto these skirmishers is a really nice way of doing it as well. Make really high tempo plays. You want to go down to 6 cards, which then puts you at 9, but you don't want to go past that. And then you just hope your opponent dry passes into round 2. So that's this list. It's pretty strong. Essentially what you want to do with Blaze of Glory is you either want to move Juta or Morkvarg from your deck into your graveyard. Now what Juta is going to do is that gives you up to 12 removal on your Blaze of Glory, so basically like a much better version of Adder. But if you discard Morkvarg, it's only going to be 5 removal, which can be nice, but Morkvarg's also going to come back from your graveyard onto your side of the board. Now if you discard Juta, you've also got Sigdrifer's Right to call her back in straight away, and also we're using Hjalmar, which banishes a unit in your graveyard and damages an enemy unit by its power. So you can use this Juta in your graveyard to deal 12 damage with Hjalmar as well. That's the deck. It's a pretty interesting one. Definitely want to mess around with it myself. We've also got Scowl, who's another option to discard with your Blaze of Glory for 10 removal, and you could call him back in later, and he's also a nice target for Hjalmar. I think this deck's pretty good. I definitely want to mess around with it on stream, and it's definitely a fun one if you're looking to climb the Faction Challenge with Skellige. I definitely would strongly recommend it. For the monsters deck, I could not help but go for a rat deck. Now, a rat deck is a little bit what it sounds like, except you're not playing rats on your side of the board, you're playing rats on your opponent's side of the board. There's only 18 slots you can play cards in Gwent, and we're trying to fill at least 15, 14, 13 of those up with 1 strength rats, which is then going to stop our opponent from being able to play their last 5 or 6 cards, hopefully. Now, the way we achieve this is through the Noon Wraith. A Noon Wraith spawns 2 rats on an enemy row when it dies, so we can consume these, but we can also create some more with Coranthia and with Operator, so we can consume our Noon Wraiths, and then we can also use Ritual Sacrifice, which trigger all ally units death wish ability. So let's say I've got 4 Noon Wraiths down on the board. I've played 2. I've got 1 from Operator and 1 from Coranthia. That means I've got 4 down in total, right? I can then play Ritual Sacrifice, which is going to put 8 rats on my opponent's side of the board, but I can then also use my 3 leader charges, which is going to put 6 more, which is going to put 14 rats on my opponent's side of the board. But also Operator has put a Noon Wraith on the side of my opponent, so I've got 15 units on my opponent's side of the board, which they're just then, by that point, probably not going to have a chance to play any more cards. Now, it can be risky if your opponent's using Bone Talisman, for example, and cards like that. You can get countered pretty badly, but fortunately, that does not seem to happen very often. So Bone Talisman boosting all allied units by 1. Not many decks run that. It's just going to be a loss if they do. But what you then do, once your opponent's side of the board is filled with rats, they're not going to be able to play any cards. You just keep playing your cards. You've got Jotun here, who boosts self by 2 for every unit more your opponent has on the battlefield. So this can come in at like 15, 16. I've got it up to like 20 points before. You can even get up to 30, to be fair, as well. And you can also then use your card Vran Warrior, which whenever a unit is destroyed during your turn, boosts self by 1. And then you hit him with Glusty as your last play, which is going to destroy all his 1 strength units and boost self by 2 for each. If this strategy works, you win. Now, the way you get the strategy to work is make sure you win round 1, so you've got a long round 3. So don't be afraid to use your big cards like your Gurn, like Goliath, and your Thrive cards in round 1. So we've got Bruxa for Thrive, we've also got Drowners, and the Lavas as well. Now, the Beast is also a good option to just try and carry you through the next round. We've also got Whispers here, because Whispers can tutor your Ritual Sacrifice, and I've put Raw Decree and Nalgafar in just for the consistency of making sure you get the right cards when you need them. Have fun. So for the Nilfgaard list, I was planning on going for a Vitir list, but when I was sort of playing around with the provisions, I couldn't quite get something I was happy with. I was ended up having too many bad 4 provision cards in, because I think in Nilfgaard at the moment there's a lot of really strong cards in at this high provision rating that I couldn't really justify cutting. So this is what I've gone for Imposter. It is using Masquerade Ball. What you want to do is play that round 1, and then you want to use a side to put it back in your deck, and then find it again using Matter. There's also another chance to find it using Roderick. So lots of ways to play essentially one of the best cards in the whole game twice, which in my opinion shouldn't really be a thing, but it is what it is. Also, because Masquerade Ball is playing poison, we've got lots of other poison cards like Morale, like the Rot Tossers and Fangs of the Empire as well. We're also running some Thirsty Dames and quite a few locks as well. Just to touch on a couple of other cards you've got the Defender, which you basically, I still think is worth including in the list, even if we've not got that big Vitir, because you can just put your Masquerade Ball behind it, so it's not going to get yeet waved, or it's a lot more difficult to destroy, because this Nilfgaard Defender is very overpowered in my most humble of opinions. So just put your Masquerade Ball behind this. Van Hamar's going to destroy a locked unit, and also, like I say, just got lots of poison, lots of locks where disrupting your opponent. So it's a pretty strong deck. I also just whacked a Bomb Heaver in there and a Purify. Now the Purify is going to be good for dealing with your opponent's defenders, and then the Bomb Heaver to deal with your opponent's scenarios. So yeah, that's the list. But essentially, the deck you're going to be playing lots of dwarfs, because your leader ability is giving all dwarfs in your deck 1 armor, and it's going to spawn a Tempering. Now a Tempering is this little thing down here. It's a 4 provision card which boosts an ally by 5, and if it's a dwarf, also give it 2 armor. So pretty much a lot of our deck revolves around things like the Dwarf Berserker, which have armor on them and they're going to do damage if they've got it. A big powerhouse card you've got here is Xavier Morin. So whenever you play a dwarf, it's going to gain 1 armor, and if it's got armor, it boosts self by 1 at the end of the turn. Now it obviously spawns in with 1 armor with this leader ability as well, so this card actually becomes really good for 7 provisions. Up here you've got some really expensive cards. 2 to mention are Zoltan and Gabor, because they've got the potential of giving you resilience, so that's carryover for round 2 and round 3, which can be really powerful. In at 10 provisions, you've got 2 thinning cards. Nova Guardian Justice is amazing in this, because you're spawning a dwarf in the front row, and then you can play a bronze dwarf from your deck. Now often your target for that might be a Mahakam Volunteer round 1, because that's going to then thin your deck really nicely, and make sure that for your round 2 and your round 3, you're going to be drawing into those higher power gold cards that you're looking for. Call of the Forest is also a really nice option. It's pretty much just Raw Decree, but you get a boost of 1 on the card you play, so this card's brilliant. And up here we've got some really big powerful boys. So you've got Monroe, which transforms 2 allied rowdy dwarfs into Dwarven Berserkers. Now these are Dwarven Berserkers here. And Zoltan here is going to spawn 2 rowdy dwarfs on this row. You can also boost all allied rowdy dwarfs by 2, but often you're going to go for spawning them. Now there is a big consideration with this list to use this Zoltan card that is here, Zoltan's Company. I was just kind of struggling to fit it in. You could maybe ditch Paulie, but this card would be really good potentially with Zoltan. I just think that most of the time you're going to spawn the rowdy dwarfs and then turn them into Dwarven Berserkers with Monroe rather than the other way around. We've also got the Great Oak, which is pretty much a shoe-in for most Scoia'tael decks, and what you'll find is a lot of the time with this dwarf deck you'll be playing on the same row anyway. Now down here there's some interesting choices, and I've seen these in Pro Ladder recently with cards like Wagon Burn, which is actually a neutral card that is, if it's got armor itself, it's going to, at the end of every allied turn, give 1 armor to adjacent units. This can be really good for giving your things like your Dwarven Berserkers armor. And also the Manulet here, which if it's down on the board is going to give 2 armor to everything, or 1 armor if it's own armor's been removed. So these cards are really nice. There's also another card in at 4 provisions you might want to test out and play around with, which is the Iron Falcon Infantry, because this card comes in at 4 points for 4 provisions with no armor, but if you can give it armor, it's going to boost self by 1 every turn. So this card's pretty good. Unfortunately, the reason I've not included it is because the tempering doesn't give it that boost. Now these cards in at 4 provisions are just really solid options. The Marauders, the Miner, and the Dwarven Skirmisher are all really good cards, but there's actually quite a few good 4 provision options. If you want to just add in some of your own cards, definitely just go for it, mess around with the deck a little bit, and yeah, hopefully it works for you. Other than cash, I just went for a poison lineup with the Passiflora, and I went for Timboy in as an expensive card. Now, pretty much you always just want to use mainly the same sort of cards with this, which are Horde cards. So Saul's going to be in here, we've got the Boat, and also the Passiflora is going to spawn a Cyclodoctus and also a Peaches. Now, Peaches are really good in this list because all you need to have is 2 coins in your bank, and this is going to boost by 1 at the end of each turn. I went for a poison heavy lineup with the Traffickers, the Fish Techs, the Hounds, and also Morale. Some lists might ditch these Hounds and instead go for the Sly Seductresses or something along those lines, but I decided I just wanted to go kind of poison heavy with this list and include the Hounds as an option there. I also just wanted to include the big power cards like Ewald and Philippa, as well as Amike, which are all really powerful cards. Matter here is going to draw you Passiflora, or if not, it's going to draw you Timboy, and Timboy is a nice way of sort of not using Madame Louisa and Savola, and you don't have to spend the coins with him, but if you've got them, they can be a nice option to damage all units by 2 instead of just 1 row. So that's the list. It's pretty bog standard. I also whacked in a couple of Kikimo Warriors. What you want to do with these is eat the ship, then the ship will come back out next turn if you've got 7 coins, and then you eat the ship again. So these cards demand an answer. Maybe you just want to use one of these, and you could throw in a little crime card, like a Line of Credit is not even that bad in this list, but maybe you just want to use a Bloody Good Fun or a Assault. Something to that extent will do you just fine. But yeah, that's the list. On to the next one. Okay, so the last list is a Northern Realms Uprising mid-range list. It focuses just pretty much around getting boost on the board and then spamming home power with your Visagard in round 3 and just swarming with boosts and not letting your opponent win the game through that. This card is pretty much the powerhouse in this deck in my opinion. I think it's pretty overpowered. Uprising is not something I love playing, even though I'm a Northern Realms boy, because I do think it's just a little bit too strong. It is one of the stronger decks at the moment. I generally try to avoid it, so I don't actually take any credit for this list. I've just taken this from Busher, who won the Gwent Partners tournament using this list. So like I say, pretty much you just want to normally on the first round play 3 pretty bad cards and then pass at 7, and then you can start playing your powerhouse cards in round 2 and round 3 because your opponent's going to be pretty scared about you in a long round. Also wanting to get some of your removal options out, and it's really difficult to play against basically. That's why this deck's good. You've got lots of boosts, you're good in a long round, but you've also got lots of quick tempo plays like Falibor, like Prince Isis, that can really shut your opponent down. The Vanguards are also just pretty overpowered because you just put one of these down at 6 strength, but then you can add a layer some more, you can reinforcement some more, and then each one's coming down at 9 points, including 2 bodies and including boosts, which then your Bone Talisman loves, your Voimir loves, and of course your Visagard loves. So this deck is incredibly good, really, really strong, and the deck list is in the description. Hi, so if you enjoyed the video, please do subscribe to the YouTube. If you've got any questions, for example, maybe you don't have all the resources to craft these decks and you want to know which cards you can include that you do have, head over to my Twitch channel. I've got a lovely little community over there that I'm sure would love to help you out. If I cannot, that's probably the best place. So I'm streaming pretty much every day at the moment, so there's a good chance I'll be live right now, and you can find my Twitch in the description. I hope you did enjoy the video. Please do subscribe if you want to see more Gwent content from me, because I do plan on uploading more stuff here. And yeah, nice one. Have a good rest of the day. Safe.